Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Hey, welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where island survival means mastering the art of making gourmet meals out of coconuts and figuring out how to send emails via message in a bottle. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives in cool places like this. Imagine being stranded on a desert island with nothing but your wits to rely on. Now, picture starting a company from scratch in today's crazy market. A lot of you have done that. Surprisingly similar, aren't they? Well, welcome to Uncharted Waters, where we'll explore how classic survival tales can guide modern business leaders through the choppy seas of entrepreneurship. Now, I'm here in the South Pacific paradise of Fiji, and today we'll draw some parallels between three iconic stories: Robinson Crusoe, Treasure Island, and Castaway, and the challenges faced by SaaS founders and executive leaders in moving from obscurity to notoriety. You know, these tales of survival and adventure and resilience offer timeless lessons for navigating the complex world of business. The first one, Robinson Crusoe, the art of self-reliance and resource management. You know, way back, Daniel Defoe wrote Robinson Crusoe. It was about Robinson Crusoe who was shipwrecked and alone, and he built a life from scratch using the only resources he had at hand. He crafted his own tools, grew crops, made wine, even created a calendar to maintain a sense of time and progress. And you know, for executives and founders, Crusoe's story teaches the importance of resourcefulness and strategic planning. You know, kind of like Crusoe rationing his supplies. You know, CEOs must carefully allocate their company's resources, be it funding, talent, and most importantly, time. Time is the most valuable resource you have, and of course, we can all figure it out. I mean, you can figure it out all by yourself, but speed wins. You know, someone else who pays for true expertise to speed critical processes will outperform trial and error every single time. But the key here is allocating resources well, whether that be finances or time. There's a balance. Crusoe's innovative use of available materials mirrors the need for businesses to adapt and repurpose assets in changing markets. Second lesson today from Fiji comes from Treasure Island, navigating treacherous waters and managing diverse teams. You know, interestingly enough, that island right there is named Treasure Island. Is it the real one? Who knows? No, I'm sure it's not. Lots of places have those, but it's still actually kind of cool. So Robert Louis Stevenson's adventure novel presents young Jim Hawkins navigating a world of pirates, mutiny, and hidden treasures. It was one of my favorite stories growing up. I probably read it 50 times. But the story is filled with lessons on leadership and team dynamics. I didn't pick that up at the time. It's just a great story. But then you got Jim Hawkins offset by the character Long John Silver, charismatic but duplicitous cook. And he demonstrates how leaders' actions can inspire loyalty or breed mistrust. And as an executive, as a leader, how do you balance charisma with authenticity? You know, are you fostering a culture of trust, or is there a risk of mutiny brewing beneath the surface? The diverse crew of the Hispaniola, from the aristocratic Squire Trelawney to the rough and tumble sailors, mirrors the varied personalities and skill sets in any organization. And how effectively are you at leveraging the diverse talents within your team? Are you, like Jim Hawkins, able to adapt your communication and leadership style to connect with different team members in the way that they want to be connected with? You know, for most of us, it doesn't come naturally, but the cool thing is it can be learned and developed. And our third lesson today comes from Castaway, overcoming isolation and maintaining vision. You know, if I only had a volleyball for this one, right? Wilson, you know it. You know, Robert Zemeckis' film, Tom Hanks' character, Chuck Nolan, survives years of isolation on a deserted island using creativity and perseverance to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. And for executives, especially in startups and scaling companies, that feeling of isolation can be all too familiar. You experience that? I know I have, my entrepreneurial journey. But just like Nolan talking to Wilson the volleyball, leaders often need to maintain their vision and motivation even without immediate feedback or support. That can be really tough. Nolan's journey also teaches the importance of adaptability and continuous learning from things he had to do, like learn to fish, making fire. Remember that? I made fire. I mean, he didn't know how to do that before he went there. But Nolan acquired new skills crucial for survival. And in the rapidly evolving business landscape, are you consistently updating your skills and knowledge? Are you continuing to expand your leadership capabilities? Are you encouraging a culture of continuous learning within your organization? And hey, that starts with you. Finally, I look at Nolan's unwavering desire to return home, and that is the importance of having a clear long-term vision. Despite setbacks, he never loses sight of the ultimate goal, and that vision keeps him going, even at his low points. And there were more than just a few of those. Ultimately, that's what made him decide to build a raft and go. And as a leader, do you have that compelling vision that keeps you and your team motivated, even through tough challenges? These three stories, Robinson Crusoe, Treasure Island, Castaway, offer valuable lessons in resource management, team leadership, and maintaining vision through adversity. Just as our literary heroes navigated the challenging island environments, execs have to steer their companies through unpredictable seas of modern business. Building a company is like surviving on a desert island. It requires ingenuity, resilience, and a clear sense of purpose. By viewing your leadership challenges through the lens of these classic tales, you can develop the mental fortitude and strategic thinking needed to transform your business island into a thriving paradise. Remember, every great story has its challenges, but how the hero responds determines the outcome. And as you navigate your own business adventure, keep these lessons close at hand. I mean, who knows? Your journey might just become the next great tale of entrepreneurial survival and success. Until next time, may your business wins be favorable and your corporate chores bountiful. My last guest on Tuesday was founder Dr. Paul Ashley. We talked about his SaaS journey building Anonymy Labs, leadership versus followership, and the future of privacy and security. And our expert guest last week was Richard Harris, expert in go-to-market and sales. We talked about resilience in the sales process, the right go-to-market motion, and how to ask the right questions at the right time. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Greg Brooks, partner at SearchTides, which is a hub for all things search, SEO, and the AI era of searching online. Greg's helping to shape the future of effective SEO, utilizing large language models and navigating AI-driven world. Greg's collaborated with industry giants like Home Depot, Zillow, Western Union, and FanDuel. So get off the island and get found online. Welcome someone who is changing the tides of search, Greg Brooks. Hey, Greg, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, what's going on, Jeff? How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. If you would, let's share your journey in SEO with us, from maybe early mistakes to your proactive approach today, and kind of how the evolution of everything has shaped your perspective on providing value-based services.
Yeah, absolutely. So where we are right now with SearchTides is we are a hub for all things search, SEO, AI optimization, the future of how people seek knowledge online. And I think the reason why we've kind of expanded with that over the years is because as I've become, when I was a teeny tiny minnow, knowing nothing about search and kind of just starting off on my own, you have a very limited perspective of what value is for people and how that can be deemed, because you're so excited to be working with someone. You've never really navigated the relationship between how can I be helpful for someone and then also how can I establish boundaries. You're just kind of like, ooh, I'm being paid money to do something that's incredible. I want to make sure that doesn't stop happening.
Yeah.
And so I think things started off kind of like at a very basic local level in search. And then it was really just doing whatever tricks and techniques would get good rankings in that moment and in that time period. And as we started to grow and there started to be then, with SearchTides, stepping into a larger role and a larger capacity there with more people and just understanding. I'll never forget the day that a client told me, I am very excited about what you can do in the next 6 months, but I'm very focused on making sure that you have great results that hold up 4 years from now. And that made me sort of realize, that made me realize I was kind of like on, that we were not fully aligned with our incentives and where we were coming from. And so that kind of put us on a journey of how we can really, really do that. And where we landed was, number one, you can't fake it. And number two, you really have to have that ethos baked into your company culture. And number three, you have to do that by having, yes, short-term wins and opportunities, but always a focus on the longevity, which I think things like search and SEO are so challenging for so many people because they do something that's kind of like a what's working now, or it's a trick, or it's a hack. And then they get into a position where they're kind of just, something changes and all of a sudden their core strategies have evaporated, but that's because they weren't really built from a sustainable fashion to begin with.
And that happens so much. I mean, SEO changes all the time. And I think we're in one of those moments now as we're starting to see search engines. I mean, Google is pioneering, AI search results, which is very different than kind of the old way. So again, the landscape changes.
Yeah.
And how do you see that evolving? I mean, the advent of AI, large language models, and what should businesses be focused on in order to stay ahead?
Ooh, that's a great, very, very, that's a good question. I think that I'll break it down in a couple different categories. So if you are in search, you have to understand that what's happening is there's no longer one core area where people are going to gather information and knowledge online, which used to basically be Google. And so how do you create a strategy that works on Bing? Because that's what Chat GPT uses. How do you create a strategy that other LLMs are pulling from, like, and seeing which ones, how you can kind of become the answers on these LLMs? In the future, it's going to be optimizing for something that you've never seen before and you will never see, because it'll be a niche search online or a niche LLM online that's being used for a specific purpose. And so understanding how those things get backed up and understanding how models actually learn and scour the internet for information, much the exact same way that Google does, and understanding how you could put yourself at the forefront of that is really important. That's in search. I can go into more details there. I think broadly, the way that businesses should think about AI is empowering the people that work at their company to make life easier for them and allow them to do less of the things that they don't want to do, but also those are things that they do know how to do, as opposed to trying to use tools to do things that no one has any idea how to do without tools.
That makes a lot of sense. And that is challenging, though. You know, we're learning something that doesn't necessarily exist yet. We're growing with it.
Yeah, it is. And I think the best way to go about thinking about that is you have to have three things. Number one is you have to have an open mind. So you can't say, hey, this is the way that it is today, therefore the way that, that's how it's going to be tomorrow. Number two, you need to have a culture of openness. So you have to make it both okay to explore things in your company or for yourself, and then also to be wrong and not be shamed for doing so. And I think number three, you kind of need to share. So you find out things, share with your colleagues, share with your peers, share with other people in your position, and find out what they're doing. Because if you have a few different people doing that, the summary of all of your experiences, you're going to learn way faster than if you were just doing it on your own in isolation.
Right. Yeah, it's super helpful. I mean, from an SEO perspective, content was big for a long time, and AI has significantly driven the cost out of creating content. But how do businesses leverage technology to do that and scale effectively while maintaining quality?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think ultimately, like, the first thing that we need to do is separate out where content is today versus where it will be tomorrow and where it's not today. So content is not, I can click a button and I can create good content today. That doesn't exist yet. For ChatGPT 10.0, that probably will exist. So the future will very much be push button, great content creation. Right now, the difference is understanding that there's a collaborative process with the GPT model to create good content that's based off of your own understanding of what good and what quality is. And it's based off of adhering to your own standards. So I'll give you a specific example of how we create content using Chat GPT. Basically, let's say that we have a topic we want to write about, and we go online and we see what other good articles already exist. So if we're trying to rank in Google, we can do that by looking at the top search results. If we want to create a video piece of content, we can go look and see what video exists. We can go download the transcripts, all that sort of stuff. We can feed that content into Chat GPT and say, hey, what are all the subtopics that are being talked about in this article, in these videos, and kind of get an understanding of the worldview and what that looks like. And now we have kind of like an outline-ish of the types of things that we want to write about. So that's the first step. The next step is we actually upload Google's content helpfulness guidelines directly to Chat GPT. And we say, hey, we want to adhere to these guidelines of experience, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. So make sure that whatever we're creating together does that. So you could see here, Jeff, like this is where the line is. If we don't know what to look for, we've already lost the ability to create something of the highest level of quality. But if we do know what to look for and what we should be striving for, now it's way less work because we don't have to do these things. So now I can go and I can create an article. I can go ask ChatGPT, hey, can you remove fluff from this article? I can go ask ChatGPT, hey, yeah, I know, right? Can you add in more expertise? Where are opportunities for me to put quotes or facts? Can you go look up some good quotes or facts that I can put into this article? How can I increase my trustworthiness? So we're being collaborative, but again, we know what the end result should look like. That's what our own expertise is. And if we didn't, we would just be guessing and we probably wouldn't get something that's good. So that's kind of how we use it. And that's our recommendation for how people use AI tools. It doesn't sidestep your own requirement to be knowledgeable and an expert yourself, but it enables you to go much faster and potentially more comprehensively than you would have done on your own.
That makes a lot of sense. And just my own curiosity, do you stick with ChatGPT or do you use other things like Claude or Perplexity or other models as well?
I think like eventually the other models will be good. I think that people kind of have their own niche thing. We've been building our own internal models since before ChatGPT even existed in the public eye. So like we have our own stuff for doing things. But I think ultimately the easiest recommendation for me would just be the more often you're doing something specific, the more it makes sense to go look for a specific solution. If you're doing lots of things one time, then you should probably just be using ChatGPT to do those things. I think everyone's got their flavor of the week with LLMs, and that's totally cool. But you have kind of one company that's investing more resources than everybody else in tuning their model. And so unless you have something specific you're learning for, I think you need like a compelling case to go away from it.
Makes sense. Well, in an era where labor is gaining leverage, and I think some of that is really driven by AI, how can companies attract and retain top talent? Because we still need that in order to drive the AI and produce things that are good.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the reason why is because as people make more hires in their business, they understand that talent is actually the number one thing that's necessary to be successful. And in an era where you have technology enabling talent, all that really means is that you best talent is actually now even further outperforming the not best talent. And so the gap widens with the use of technology. So now it's even more important. And so now so the flip side of that is somebody who's amazing has lots of choice. So how do you attract and keep someone like that? Well, I'll give like 2 or 3 different ideas. So number one is like your company needs to stand for something. You need to have a way of doing things that's different. You have to have a thesis. You need the perception of brand equity. You need actual brand equity. You need to be able to say like, this is what makes us different than all of the other things that look exactly like us. And it should be clear and obvious before somebody's even interacting with you specifically, because they need to see that and feel that. I think you need to show pathways to growth for people. I think high performers, the one thing that makes them leave companies is when they grow at a different rate than they're able to grow within an organization. So if I learn more and I get better and I evolve, do you have a place for me to go on a timeline that makes sense for me? If not, like there's many other places that will give me that. And so making sure that you have growth paths and manager training and leadership training and promotional slots in there. And again, that's a company culture thing. Like you ultimately need to have a company that wants to embrace that, as opposed to people who are worried about getting like stepped over by people who were potentially not as senior of a position as them. Like and I think it's a mentality. It's like the best mentors, the best leaders make themselves obsolete. They make themselves, they train someone who can eventually be better than them because they train the person in the ways that they are. And then the person is also these things that they're not. So you should be creating people who are better than you, who are better performers than you. And ultimately it's insecurities if you're kind of worried about like someone going further than you.
Yeah, that's big. Yeah, culture is so important in building that within an organization. And I like that you're really having that purpose to attract people. And they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And you're really giving them that and then showing them the path forward. Here's what the future looks like. And they don't run out of future. I think that's a big reason, like you said.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 2 years here. And so then they make a plan to exit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was this book that I read a bunch of years ago called The Power of Full Engagement. And it talked about how we kind of think of like physical needs in our Western society, but there are 4 categories of needs. There's physical, there's mental, there's emotional, and there's spiritual needs, which you don't have to be a spiritual or religious person. It just means feelings of purpose. It means feelings of like sense of belonging and things like that. And so we try to give fulfillment across all 4 of those different areas. I think probably most companies most companies just think that it's an exchange of money for time and service, which is like the most outdated way you can think about this stuff. And then I think the next phase beyond that is companies being like, well, we'll subsidize mental health benefits because that means we care about your mental health. But it's like, no, you don't really care.
Right.
You just are down to like fix someone if they're broken by sending them to someone else. But like the ethos of the healthiness of what you do, how managers speak to you, what your growth paths are, when you're feeling down, are you treated like a cog in a wheel or a human being? Like you can't fake that. And so that's why culture is really important, because it's what you said earlier about like the power shifting away from capital more towards labor. It's really easy to see who's going to win in the future. The people who think that money solves problems will lose. And the people who understand that like genuinity and authenticity and actually caring will win. And the people who are saying stuff like, well, how do I get that? You'll lose, because the answer is you can't fake it. You have to actually want it. So you need to understand like how you need to change as an individual so that you stop thinking that money is the solver of all of your problems, or you can just fling dollars at somebody and that'll fix it. Because the same way that technology enables individuals to have a raised bar of performance, that same expectation is now going to exist for companies and for leaders at companies. Can you be in the top 10% of a leader? Can you be in the top 10% of like the ethos of a company? Because AI is going to just create more companies. Companies don't scale the same way. They don't hire the same way. There's going to be more choice for consumers. There's also going to be more choice for employees. And so how do you stand out amongst an increasing pool of organizations?
Yeah. The last time we talked about just the importance of mindset for leaders. And you brought up a concept that I thought was really interesting, and that is that the need to be able to hold multiple counterintuitive ideas simultaneously.
Right.
And how does that fit into the mindset, or how does that mindset benefit leaders?
Well, I think it's just understanding that you um, you have different modes that you're in, and so the CEO of a company, which you can use as a proxy for a leader at a company, but the only difference is that the CEO has no boundaries in terms of what they're responsible for. Leaders at some point, like, there's some area of the business that's just genuinely not relevant to them, but the CEO, that's untrue for. So using the CEO as an example, like, the CEO of a company's job is to understand in the most zoomed out capacity where things need to go, and then also be like viciously involved in moving things forward in an expedited fashion, however zoomed in that may be. So it's understanding what the field looks like, but at the same time being in the field to make the one thing that's going to be in the thread to give the level of progress to the company happen faster, or happen in a faster and healthier way, or something like that. And so leaders very much need to do the same, because they need to be doing that for themselves. And they also need to be able to be doing that for their team simultaneously.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, as we're building, obviously things are changing, not just in SEO, but just the entrepreneurial landscape. And how do we know whether to stick with what we're doing or pivot? How do we balance that need, I guess, for agility, and then giving things sufficient time to play out and succeed?
That's actually a tough question. I actually just I think probably the way that you should know if you should stay or you should go is essentially, is your industry getting smaller or larger? So if your industry is getting smaller, then you're going to be going uphill, which means you need either a massive advantage or you need to change how you're going about it to increase the size of your industry. If your industry is getting larger, now you have a little bit more like tailwinds that can push you forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And really looking at industry. Yeah, we definitely want to be in growing industries. Don't want to be starting new companies in yellow pages and newspapers.
Yeah, and so I think the best framework to give people is, especially if you're starting out, is what does 10 years from now look like? Well, what does 5 years from now look like? If you can't think of 10 years, okay, do 5 years. What does that look like? What are the industries? Run like 4 different scenarios. What are the industries that are always bigger in 5 years and in 10 years from now? That's a pretty safe place to play.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, 10 years in technology just seems like an eternity. 5 years, the way things are moving now, 5 years is an eternity. But I think those are really good ways to think about how the market is moving. If we look back 10 years, the world is fundamentally different today than it was 10 years ago. And think of all the things that have happened. I mean, the iPhone is just over or 10 years old. And just, that innovation alone, from that to where we are today, and smartphones everywhere. And, we've got more technology in our pockets now than put people on the moon.
Yeah.
So there's so much that has happened in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. And so I would, you can get super specific with how you classify things, or you can just say like IT. Is IT getting larger or smaller 10 years from now? Okay, I'm going to go someplace in there. But if I was to use some specifics, I would say that like AR or VR are probably pretty good bets to be larger in the future. I would say, so just think of the big things, which is like entertainment. How are we going to be entertained in the future? Well, what's the trend of everything? The trend of everything is basically more consumer choice, again, which is always the trend with technology. Yeah. So like, are movies going to be bigger or smaller in the future? Well, probably smaller in general, because there's going to be more things that aren't movies or shorts or stuff, as the ability to create content becomes more easily happening. In energy, what are the energy sources that are on the way in, that are on the way out? Policy in terms of the world, what are things that we are caring about more as a society and less as a society? I don't know if we talk current economics, like stuff like crypto. It's like, is that going to be bigger or small? Is how do payments flow in the future compared to how they how they were interacted with 10 years ago? Like, is it going to look more like Blade Runner 2049, or is it going to look more like 1990? And so just being able to think about those sorts of things, and you don't need to have this all sorted out. You could just like interact with any company and do the same exercise and just be like, what does this look like in 5 years? What does this look like in 10 years?
You ready to dominate your market and skyrocket your revenue? Dive into Small Fish, Big Pond, building a world-class business that swims circles around competitors. This book is packed with powerful marketing and leadership insights, guaranteed to transform your business and operate world-class. Small Fish, Big Pond delivers proven strategies to sharpen your marketing message, deliver unmatched value to your clients, and guide your prospects' buying journey to one inevitable conclusion: that your company is the only solution for them. Inside, you'll find step-by-step frameworks and time-tested growth principles to attract your ideal clients, convert them, and then transform them into your brand ambassadors. Get your copy today in print, ebook, or audio at smallfishbigpond.com or on Amazon. Plus, remember, every book sale supports charity, so dive in and make a difference. Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of changes in search and SEO. I mean, fragmentation of search results is definitely a significant trend. And how do businesses adapt their SEO strategies to navigate the changing landscape effectively and remain relevant?
It's a good question. I think at the local level, search is probably as important than ever, just because the way people search is based off of geography and it's based off of location. And then you throw in a couple other really important things like your review profile, your your addresses being in sync everywhere across the internet. So what does your syndication profile look like? And a national level, I think if you're just starting out and you have like a new brand, search might not be the channel for you, because you can be 5 years apart with your competition. Versus on the flip side, if you're generating lots of search traffic today, you have a massive opportunity to double / 5x, 10x that search traffic, because it's so top heavy. If you're getting traffic today, you can get way more in the future. So I think it's just understanding where you're at now and where your competition's at now and how far away you are from them in terms of things like website authority, domain rating, things like that. In terms of if you're local, you're fine. If you are, again, national and you're like a DR or DA20 and all your competition is an 80, this is not the channel for you. So it's just being more thoughtful about that. But the future is essentially like syndication across the internet. So stuff like digital PR is going to continue to be more important over time. It's like, what is your digital footprint as a brand? What are people saying about you on review sites? What are employees saying about you on Glassdoor? Where are you talking on social media? What other than you are saying you're good? Are people talking about you, writing about you? Is there press about you? That sort of stuff. Like, your whole profile is going to become more important as a company. And then the individuals within that company, especially stuff like authors, are going to become even more important. Also, it's just like, what gives this person the right to talk about this topic?
Makes sense. Yeah, especially with Chat GPT and AI being able to write a bunch of things and just put out a bunch of content. I think that authority and who is it coming from and what is the background? What's the source of the information? Or is it something that was just AI generated, or is there something deeper there? So did it come from experience?
100%. And so this in SEO, there used to be this thing called Your Money, Your Life. I mean, it still is. It's for finance and for health. It's basically things that have to do with your money and things that have to do with your health, essentially. There was a higher standard that was used with your authorships than in everything else. So basically, like, what gives you the right? Are you an actual expert? Are you validated? Are you an authority on this piece in this specific space? That is a much higher threshold than every other industry. Over time, that gap will simply raise for everyone. So because AI content will be so prevalent, you will need to be an actual expert across the board in all those different ways.
Yeah. I think that's good. That's probably healthy, but then at the same time, it becomes a little more difficult to stand out with all the mass of content. But I think it is that expertise just rises above the noise.
I think so, but that's only one of the pieces. So to your point, like, okay, so it rises above the noise, but now you're in a pool with everybody else whose expertise has risen above the noise. Now what? And so, our interpretation and our answer there is you have to stand for something. So you will need further bifurcation. You will need to further say, like, this is who I am. This is who we are. This is who we're not. We're perfect for this type of person or for these folks. We're not perfect for these other people. We value this more as a company than that as a company. And so, for example, like, we are a product-driven company. We care more about our product than other parts of the business. So you might not get the same level of customer service as a company that doesn't care about their product, but on the flip side of it is like totally cool dealing with your problems immediately. So it's just declaring where you stand across these different issues and what your priorities are, and doing so in a way that's passive absorptive for your audience, essentially. So can you do that across social media? Can you do that in your email newsletters so that people understand, like, you're here to stay? And also they get that, like, you're either the perfect fit for them, or they don't care, or they should go look for someone else that is a perfect fit for them.
That's really smart. What other strategies do you recommend for businesses to future-proof their SEO efforts in light of all the ongoing tech advancements?
I think, like, the most important thing that a business can do is flip time so that time is on their side. So what is time on someone's side looking like? If I interact with you one time, whether it's on your social media or I find your website or whatever it is, can you passively feed me information for the next 6 months or 9 months without the expectation for me to buy anything, so that I can slowly over time be convinced that you're here for the long run, and also you're a company that values your word, and you've taken enough time to build trust with me that I feel comfortable interacting with you and purchasing from you or working with you or whatever it is. If you can do that, which requires you to create great content and it requires you to actually put stuff out there, if you can do that, you have flipped time, and now it works for you as opposed to being up against it. And if you've done that, like, you will be fine in the future.
That makes sense. Your business model is a little bit different than kind of the traditional billable hours model, and it's all about value-based services, which I love. Tell us a little bit more about value-based services, what it is, and then how businesses can transition to that model and offer more value-based services rather than just time for dollars.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, like, the best way that I can describe what being value-based is, okay, here's the deal, Jeff. We're working on a project together. I can deliver that whole project completed for you in 2 months. Everything will be done, perfectly exactly the way you want. Or I can do all of those things. Everything will be done exactly the way that you want in 2 weeks. Which is more valuable for you?
Faster.
Yeah.
Faster and done. I mean, that's...
So, okay. So now we should throw billable hours out the window, because one of them takes less time to do, but it has more value. So now we're out of the game of billable hours, and now we're really on, like, a couple different things. We're focused typically on deliverables. So it's what we're delivering for you. And then you can make a judgment if it was to the standards that you're looking for. And if it wasn't to the standards that you're looking for, we shouldn't be working together. We don't want to be working with people who don't want to work with us. But ultimately, like, the way that you focus on this is by being product focused. And it's, how can I provide the best possible result for the business which is not just providing the most important and best possible things for them, it's doing so in the best time frame for them. So if we're working with somebody in search and in SEO, if we can get them results in 3 months from now versus 7 months from now, that's a massive difference for the business. And so we don't necessarily think about things from an hours perspective. We think about things from basically like a payoff and effort perspective. And we're like, okay, well, where's the sweet spot? And it's not low hanging fruit, because low hanging fruit is almost always a fancy way of saying like short term outcomes, which is typically not planned. That's a losing strategy. Just focusing on short term outcomes is typically just going to be a Band-Aid fix for the fact that a company cannot actually do things over a medium and long term that it needs to. If you're only able to do short term things, you are destroyed by a competitor who can play a longer game. And you still work on short term things, but it's just not exclusively the only thing that's focused on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's kind of a disincentive for companies to work fast when it is, hourly, because it's really to their benefit to go slow and drag things out, because they make more instead of getting it done quickly and getting the results fast, so you can move on and have more wins and get those wins quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's half the companies and it's half the consumer, where I think a lot of consumers are equally uncomfortable with the idea of being billed in a different capacity, because they might not understand it and they want to put you in a box. And so they're like, well, if I have this person working for me for these amount of hours, then I know what's going on. And it's just, it's cool, but it's just not like, I don't think it's the future either.
Yeah. Well, it is that mindset of, well, if it took you less time, shouldn't it cost less?
Right.
Like, no, it shouldn't. Yeah, it takes expertise.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's just, simplicity and focus. So, really making complex things look simple when they're done quickly. And so it looks simple, but that's because there's that expertise and that focus there, to get the result.
I think so. And then I also think there's also just kind of like this understanding that sometimes keeping things simple is the complex thing. Like there's different types of people, but one of the types of persons is the intellectual. And what they try to do is they're like, it can't be this simple. And so I can make an improvement upon this. I can optimize on top of this, whatever it is. And ultimately, like that is a lost cause, because that's the wrong mentality to take. Like the effort should be about what are the core things that need to be done, and then how do I make sure everyone just stays focused on those things? And how do we not get lost in side quests or in side missions that take away from the core ethos of what we're looking to do?
It's so easy to do. Chase those shiny objects and get distracted with things that maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but they're not on mission and they're not that right next step. Is a distraction right now, maybe good later, some other time, or never. But it's really doing it at the right thing at the right time.
Yeah. And typically most of the time the right thing is just more of the same. Change nothing.
But that's not sexy. That's not what we want. We want the change, the exciting, not just more of the same.
I mean, I don't really care, like
this will work.
If you were to say like, what are some of your biggest lessons? One of the biggest lessons for sure is just continuing to keep at it is really, really challenging to do. And it is literally the number one thing that has been responsible for any semblance of success that I've had in my life.
Yeah. We've had many a discussion where we're talking about or trying to solve a problem, and like, well, we've dealt with this before. How do we do it? And here's what we did. Well, why do we stop doing that? Well, because it worked so good, then we just stopped. It's like if we just continued doing that instead of stopping and chasing something new, it'd still be working.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. Like and so to the intellectuals, I say, that's the skill. That's where you use your brain. Can you use your brain to stay on track, to stay inside the simple? When the temptation exists, can you use your mind to move away from the temptation? That's the skill. That's the challenging part. That's how you can, spend your IQ or whatever. But the point is like, yeah, trying to create the complex thing is what everybody tries to do because they don't want to feel responsible for not being successful. So they're like, it must be something else. There must be some additional stuff that I don't know about that when I simply find out about it, that will be it. And it's the same reason why people think others hold back things in conversations. There's no way, there's missing steps there. Yeah, there is a missing step. Repetition over and over and over and over and over again. That's it. Just keep doing it.
Yeah. We've worked with some really big companies, Home Depot, Zillow, Western Union. What are some lessons that you see work for the big companies that would apply to smaller companies or the up and coming companies?
I think that understanding that the work that you're doing is a fraction of what's actually being provided when you're in client services. So that is like one element. With bigger companies, I think that there's more education that needs to take place because there's more department, there's more buy-ins that need to take place. So there's more like internal selling that needs to occur. And ultimately, but I don't think that that's as relevant. It's just like you have a client and they are a human being and they have lots of like feelings and preconceived notions, and slamming your service down their throat is not a way to be successful. And a way to be successful is to understand like the client services component of what you're doing, which is number one, education. So teaching the things that need to be taught. Number two, alignment, having an agreed upon plan that everyone believes, yes, this is the way to do it. And then number three, I don't know what to call it. I guess you could call it like enforcement's a little bit too harsh, but I guess like implementation, where it's just like, okay, I've given you the things, I've given you the info or the changes that need to be made or whatever it is. Now I'm with you side by side, helping you in whatever way is necessary to get that implemented, to actually have those things go live. I think one of the big mistakes that a lot of agencies make and a lot of people in client services make is they give the thing to the client and then they go, okay, I'm all done. I did my part. If the client doesn't do their part, that's on them. No, it's actually still on you to make sure that it actually gets done or the publish button gets hit or whatever it is, because that's how you generate the result. You need all three of those things. Someone doesn't need to be forced. They must agree. So education needs to take place. Then they have to be on the same page. There needs to be alignment. And then the actual things need to happen. And you need to see that through to the end.
Yeah, good lessons. Well, as we look out at search over the next, say, 3 to 5 years, what are the significant challenges and opportunities that businesses should be aware of? And how can we start to prepare for those now?
I think search 3 to 5 years from now, I have no idea what it's going to look like 5 years from now. But I know that ultimately the way that the internet is analyzed for knowledge will remain the same. So the internet is a bunch of indexes and web pages. And even if it's a video on YouTube or it's a website, whatever it is, like these things will be consumed. Today, it's mostly by Google. So it's Google consuming these things and then running it into its internal algorithm. Tomorrow, it might be more by LLMs, but they're still going to be using search engines. So I would Chat GPT when it doesn't know what to do. It just looks on Bing. So that will continue to be the case in the future. And you showing up in all of those data sets is going to mean that you are all over the internet. And it's not just you talking about yourself, but it's other people talking about you, whether reviews, whether your employees, whether press and PR and stuff like that. Like you will need to build a consensus that you are legitimately good at what you're doing. And it has to come from not you. It has to be paired with you providing the value when someone does interact with you. And you need to do it across many different channels, because that, like, it's a 1 + 1 = 3 effect. Like, if you're everywhere, then you will get the checkbox everywhere. And if you're not, then other people will. So ultimately, like, that's the best way to prepare for the future. People are going to be using Google for, like, right now, it's very cool to say that, like, no one's using Google, Google's dead, whatever. Like, if you look at the numbers, everyone's wrong. And everyone's going to continue doing that for an unthinkably long amount of time. But what won't change is people using the internet to gain knowledge, which is, in the past, that was just using a search engine specifically. And in the future, it'll take a different format than it did in the past. And what will be the same is people looking to gain knowledge and information about what they should be doing in their life or things that they'd like to know about. And if you can use that conceptually and disperse that in all the different areas that I just mentioned, you will be in a good place.
Nice. Well, where can people learn more about you and about SearchTides online?
Yeah, you can check out SearchTides, searchtides.com. We're on YouTube with SearchTides. We're on LinkedIn with SearchTides. We talk about this sort of stuff. We have monthly events. We make a lot of posts where we talk about these sorts of things. So come and check us out and learn about the future of search, the future of AI, and how this is all going to fit together in the world of business of the future.
Awesome. Very, very good. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel, Greg.
Jeff, thanks for having me on.
Thanks again, Greg, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Greg and SearchTides at searchtides.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, check us out on YouTube as well. Full episodes, videos, shorts, outtakes, because I mess up a lot, and all sorts of things. So check that out at Champion Leadership on YouTube. And thought leaders share. I bet you're one. Everyone who shares this week gets a massage from an iguana. Hey, use it for yourself, share it with a friend, maybe even your own pet iguana, who knows. But hop on over to the island to collect. Join us next Tuesday, where our founder is Rod Moynihan, 20-year SaaS veteran who's led and scaled tech businesses across APAC, Australia, New Zealand, now serving on multiple SaaS boards and driving growth with a focus on aligning people, technology, and strategy. And next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have Eric Mersch, CFO at 2 public companies, over 40 SaaS companies as a fractional CEO. He's the author of Hacking SaaS, an insider's guide to hacking the software business success. See you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.